Karoline Leavitt just held what was easily the worst press conference of this entire Trump presidency, because as we see this White House embroiled by scandal, screw-ups, crime, and corruption, they have done everything possible to try to cover it up with lies. But those lies are backfiring worse than ever before. And of course, the most obvious example of that is Donald Trump being caught in his lies about Jeffrey Epstein. And that is the question that Karoline Leavitt was confronted over by Peter Doocy of Fox, of all people, and she immediately melted down. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting the work we're doing here. Now, Karoline Leavitt opened her press conference, as you might expect, by scolding the media. So before we get into that Epstein question, I want to start with the disgraceful statement she made.
Unfortunately, in the wake of this once-in-a-generation natural disaster, we have seen many falsehoods pushed by Democrats such as Senator Chuck Schumer and some members of the media. Blaming President Trump for these floods is a depraved lie, and it serves no purpose during this time of national mourning. Here are the facts. In the lead-up to this tragic natural disaster, the National Weather Service did its job. Despite unprecedented rainfall, the National Weather Service executed timely and precise forecasts and warnings. On July 3rd, the National Weather Service office in Austin, San Antonio, Texas, conducted forecast briefings for emergency management in the morning and issued a flood watch in the early afternoon. Flash flood warnings were also issued on the night of July 3rd and in the early morning of July 4th, giving preliminary lead times of more than 3 hours before flash flooding conditions occurred. And the National Weather Service office in New Braunfels, which delivers forecasts for Austin, San Antonio, and the surrounding areas, had extra staff on duty during the storms, despite claims of the contrary. So to any person who has deliberately lied about these facts surrounding this catastrophic event, you should be deeply ashamed. At this time, the administration's focus will be giving the victims and their communities the support they deserve during these recovery efforts in this tragic time. May God bless the great people of Texas, especially the parents who have lost their children. President Trump loves you. We are praying for you, and he will be traveling to see you later this week.
Blaming the media, Chuck Schumer and Democrats for holding this administration responsible for its cuts, its screw-ups, its complete incompetence that has led to the loss of life in Texas is not something we should be ashamed of. It is not political to call out political decisions that hurt people. That is the job of good journalists. That's the job of people who care about this country. And for Karoline Leavitt to say to families, to communities mourning in Texas right now that Donald Trump loves you, while he doesn't love you enough to fully fund FEMA and the National Weather Service, is a complete embarrassment. But it only got worse for Karoline Leavitt from there, because she was asked about Jeffrey Epstein. She gave a bad answer, and then as we'll see right after, Peter Doocy followed up, and it all went to hell.
Of what happened.
Karoline, the DOJ and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes to be held accountable?
This administration wants anyone who has ever committed a crime to be held accountable, and I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. And the Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death, and they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic.
So that was the first Epstein question that Karoline Leavitt was asked. The second one is when it became an absolute disaster. But let's stick on this for just a second. Donald Trump wants to hold criminals accountable. Anyone who's broken the law should be held accountable. What about Mr. 34 felonies? Elon's broken quite a few laws. I feel like Karoline Leavitt does so every day. Are they going to be held accountable? There's nothing about this administration that goes after crimes. It started with the pardoning of 1,500 cop-beating insurrectionists and only has gotten worse from there. This is an administration full of criminals and people willing to lie to cover that up. And it is exactly what we have seen with the whole Epstein saga. Donald Trump trying to cover for himself. Very clearly, it has backfired. And that's what happened when Pam Bondi got her lies brought up to Karoline Leavitt's face by Peter Doocy right here.
That's transparency.
Follow up on that,
Sure.
Caroline. Okay, so the FBI looks at the circumstances surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein. According to the report, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network on Fox
I've
News.
got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was
What?
saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars. They have an operation going on right now called Summer Heat, which has our murder rate trending in the lowest direction in United States history. Their emphasis on violent crime and locking up violent criminals has led to the arrest of 14,000 violent criminals. That's a 62% increase from the same time period last year. So this Attorney General and the FBI Director are committed to putting bad people behind bars where they belong. They promised an exhaustive review. That's what they did. For any further details, I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
Trying to shift the conversation towards the huge success that Pam Bondi has had is just, first of all, a joke. But I am so shocked by the good journalism done by Peter Doocy in that moment. Karoline Leavitt says, well, I don't really know what the Attorney General said. Of course you do. You were lauding it all the time. Peter Doocy's follow-up is so perfect, and you can see Karoline Leavitt stumbling over her words. She's confused. She doesn't know what she could possibly say to cover Donald Trump's ass because you can't. We know what happened. Either Donald Trump lied to us that there was an Epstein client list, that Joe Biden and Barack Obama and all the Democrats were on it. Either that's what happened, and this new revelation shows that, or Donald Trump has gone out of his way to destroy this list, to destroy any evidence that, according to Elon Musk, would implicate him. We already know that Donald Trump and Epstein were friends for decades, so none of this would be a surprise. But either Donald Trump is lying, or he's lying to cover his ass for crimes he's committed. It can only get worse from here, as even Fox is giving attention to this story. It is just all downhill from Donald Trump, and it continued to go downhill in this press conference when Karoline Leavitt was asked this question right here.
On cuts overall, over the weekend, President Trump said that Elon Musk was a train wreck. Are there, given this current viewpoint, are there concerns within the White House or from the president himself over the cuts that happened under Musk while he was advising DOJ, including the National Weather Service?
I think I've already addressed that, Kristen, and what I can tell you is that these offices were fully staffed. The San Angelo office was fully staffed with 12 forecast meteorologists. There were no vacancies. The San Antonio office was operating with 11 forecasters. And as Brian said, the union themselves said that there was adequate staffing. So I think those words speak for themselves, and the numbers speak for themselves. This was a once-in-a-century flash flood, a tragic natural disaster, and the administration is doing all that we can on the ground to help these families during this time of need. Jeff.
The cuts to the National Weather Service were directly responsible for this tragedy. That's what those who lost their job at the National Weather Service were saying. That's what people who lost their job at the National Weather Service had said months before this tragedy had even taken place, that understaffing this agency would be a complete catastrophe. We saw meteorologists not even employed by the federal government, because I know Donald Trump always likes to say that when he fires someone, they hold a grudge, or maybe they're just willing to speak out about the corruption with inside the White House. But meteorologists around the country We're saying that this was going to be a huge issue. This isn't partisan. Again, this isn't playing politics. This is talking about the bad political decisions made by this Trump administration so they could give billionaires even bigger tax cuts so Elon could play pretend president, and now people have lost their lives. And you think Donald Trump cares? The Donald Trump loves you? Yeah, well, that's not enough considering what Leavitt said right here.
Kristen, 2 questions. Thank you, Caroline. Sure. The first question is President Trump reconsidering his plan to phase out FEMA, given what officials have said is their critical role on the ground now in Texas?
Look, the president wants to ensure American citizens always have what they need during times of need. Whether that assistance comes from states or the federal government, that's a policy discussion that will continue. And the president has always said he wants states to do as much as they can, if not more. And in the case of Texas, the state and local officials are doing a tremendous job. And I know the president, Secretary Noem, and the federal government are very proud to be working with them. And the president has promised to give Texas the assistance that they need during this tragic time.
Donald Trump still wants to get rid of FEMA in the wake of this tragedy. That should demonstrate how little he cares. We've always known he doesn't care, but it couldn't be clearer than right now. He does not care about families who have seen their loved ones pass away in a horrible tragedy. If he did, he would be offering a real and robust policy response. But Donald Trump doesn't do policy unless the policy is tax cuts for the rich. He doesn't actually care. And when he tries to put forth his policy and carry it out, we're looking at the tariffs, it doesn't work out. Just take a look at what Leavitt had to say right here.
Thank you, Brian. Megan.
Secretary Bessent said yesterday that countries will boomerang back to the April 2nd tariff level starting August 1st. Why did the president decide to have those tariffs not take effect Wednesday as originally scheduled? And then I was also wondering if you could share, obviously we saw the letters the president sent out on Japan and South Korea, but if any other major U.S. trading partners are getting letters today.
Sure, yes, I can confirm. In fact, I have those letters. If you could get me the folder with the letters in them, Liz, they're right in the previous office. I have the signed letters that went out to both South Korea and Japan today. And there will be approximately 12 other countries that will receive notifications and letters directly from the President of the United States. And weeks ago, I stood at this podium and I told all of you that the President was going to create tailor-made trade plans for each and every country on this planet. And that's what this administration continues to be focused on. The President will also sign an executive order today delaying the July 9th deadline to August 1st. So the reciprocal tariff rate or these new rates that will be provided in this correspondence to these foreign leaders will be going out the door within the next month, or deals will be made. And those countries continue to negotiate with the United States. We've seen a lot of positive developments in the right direction, but the administration, the president, and his trade team want to cut the best deals for the American.
I think this certainly needs to be covered through the angle of Donald Trump's pudding brain. And I always bring that up. I think it's important, but this is an administration that's not only reckless and incompetent, but is being driven by the whims of one individual man who doesn't even know what he wants or how to accomplish it. He has more power than any president in history, and he's wielding it with a mind that doesn't work. That should be very frightful to everyone. And we're going to keep calling that out. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.